I would be playing in somebody's political hand, then I would made a biopic on Mrs. Gandhi.
So it's not a biopic.
It's a backdrop of emergency. 30% is reality, 70% is my fiction character.
Many want to know where has this story come from about Priya Singh Paul.
When I used to tweet about him, I didn't know much about him. I had met him as Kabir in my childhood, as an uncle. I did not know that that was Sanjay that I was meeting and that he was my father.
Priya Singh Paul is upset with your film that you are depicting facts which are not facts.
You see, Pehlaj Nehlani has mentioned on print that the worst thing that ever happened in this country was the emergency, and I'm so glad that this film is being made about that. It's so obvious that if you link this together, they're talking about the emergency. They're obviously talking about Indira Gandhi and Sanjay Gandhi.
Even if you had a bout of conscience in the past, maybe this bout of conscience should have come sometime in the past.
Well, I only got to know that he was my father in 2010 when I came to work in Delhi. I did not know that he was my father from the time I was born till 2010.
Hi there, welcome to our special conversation this evening. Over the last few days, a massive row has erupted over the release of a film which has been made by well-known filmmaker Madhur Bhandarkar, Indu Sarkar. There are some within the Congress who believe that this is nothing else but an attempt to slander the reputation of certain members of the Gandhi family. Then there is another person who's brought in a completely new dimension to this entire controversy, Priya Singh Paul, resident of Delhi, an Indian citizen who now says that this entire movie is an attempt which is being made to actually slander the reputation of someone who she claims was her father, Sanjay Gandhi. What is the truth and how exactly has this story now become about Priya Singh Paul versus Madhur Bhandarkar and Sanjay Gandhi's name coming in between? Priya Paul is here in our studios with us. Priya, welcome. Let me first begin by asking you, Priya, a lot of my viewers, since I put this question up that you would be joining us in the studios, a lot of our viewers want to know that how is it that the world didn't know so far till 2017, despite the fact that you've been a journalist, you've been associated with the Organization of Commonwealth Games. So even if you had a bout of conscience in the past, maybe this bout of conscience should have come sometime in the past.
Well, I only got to know that he was my father in 2010 when I came to work in Delhi. I did not know that he was my father from the time I was born till 2010.
So what did you do from 2010 to 2017 then?
Well, it took me 3 years to accept that he was my father. It was, I felt a lot of despair and hopelessness because I had wanted to find my parents. I was looking for them for a very long time. And, you know, to realize that you don't have a father who lives is a big jolt to your emotions. I wanted to find a mother and father who I could extend to my son, who was, you know, who was very young at that time, and to realize that they had gone and there was no one to talk to. There was no grandmother, no father, and obviously I did not know who the mother was. Left a kind of void in me, and it took me many years to even accept that I needed to Google his picture to see things. I just blanked out completely. But in 2015, I met somebody in Jodhpur when I was there. And I used to make a lot of political comments on Twitter and Facebook. And I used to have a lot of people like what I said and debate with me. So when I met these people in Jodhpur, they said that, oh, you know, you seem to be very attached to Sanjay Gandhi. You always mention him every year on his birthday, on his death date. You're the only one with it that we know who says, does anyone remember this gentleman kindly?
You do that even before 2010?
Always. If you see my Facebook page and you see his photographs wherever they are in the, you know, the pictures list, I started that in 2013. The moment I came on Facebook, came on Facebook.
So let me get this clear. You're saying that you got to know that Sanjay Gandhi was your father in 2010.
Yes.
But you would tweet about him and you would speak about him at whatever platform that was available to you even before 2010.
Yes.
So
no, not before 2010. Before 2017. Before I started in 2013.
Okay. From 2013 to 2017.
Correct. Yes.
So without actually telling the world what you say is your real relationship with Sanjay Gandhi, you were speaking about him.
Yes.
What is your story, Priya? I mean, many want to know where has this story come from about Priya Singh Paul?
When I used to tweet about him, I didn't know much about him. I had met him as Kabir in my childhood, as an uncle. I did not know that that was Sanjay that I was meeting and that he was my father. He used to just come, he used to visit, there was a huge connect, and I started missing him when he'd stopped coming, but I didn't know why. And nobody told me any better. It is in 2010 when I came to work in Delhi. I don't think anybody expected me to have landed up in Delhi to work here, because I was a Bombayite and I was working there in the corporate sector. So when news started flashing about me on television and in the newspapers in 2010, reference the Commonwealth Games, and I was there to oversee a lot of things. I was brought in at the last moment. That's when Dr. Vimla Gujral called me up. She was my aunt. Aunt as in she used to work with my mother, my adopted mother in Delhi. My mother founded Kalavati Saran Children's Hospital and Lady Harding.
Not many of our viewers would know who is your adopted mother.
My adopted mother.
So how did you, so before we come to your adopted mother, let's try and understand from you that your mother, you say, your biological mother and your biological father, who you say is Sanjay Gandhi, at some stage, your mother, from what I gather, married and went somewhere else. And your mother's parents decided to give you in foster care.
No, she didn't marry at that time. She was married to Sanjay.
She was married to Sanjay.
In the sense, they had a temple wedding. That is what Auntie Vimla told me.
Do you have any proof of that?
I have no proof even of my birth certificate. I'm still looking for it.
So what is it? So it's about your word versus the rest?
The only thing that can prove,
test you're willing to be subjected
I am willing to take the DNA test, because you see, the trail of my adoption has been so complicated. There are two adoption agencies involved. Both of the adoption agencies give a different story. Both of them are done at different times. One was done in 1969 June. The other was done in 1974, just before he got married. It was done, my adopted mother, Dr. Priya Singh Paul, was a very big doctor. She was, situated in Delhi. She had her family here, her friends here. She'd built the hospital here. Her entire career was spent here. There was no need for her to suddenly up it and leave Delhi and go and shift to Ludhiana, where she had no real ties. And she did that very quickly. For example, Auntie Vimla told me that, when my father's engagement was announced, which must have been somewhere around December, Feb, at the same time, my papers showed that Dr. Priya Singh Paul applied for my adoption, and I hadn't been adopted till then, in February. I then got adopted in June. And my mother left Delhi in July. And the reason that Auntie Vimla gave me was corresponding to the papers. The papers were speaking the story that she gave, which was that there was a danger to my life. A lot of people were hunting for me at that time, maybe to blackmail my father and my grandmother, maybe because the political situation was very volatile then, and they wanted me out of the way. So I was just shunted out to Ludhiana.
So I'm just trying to understand. So you have newspaper clippings or whatever, whatever information that must have been published at that point of time?
I didn't find any newspaper clippings.
Anything
I
which
started
may have been
speaking to
given by
journalists.
Your aunt?
No, my aunt Vimla just told me this, that in 1974, I had to leave Delhi because the situation was very difficult for us. There were people looking for us, and my mother had to up it and leave suddenly, and she applied for the adoption. And then I found my papers. I found my papers only in 2016. I had no adoption papers with me. My entire admission to school and everything that happened to me happened just like that.
So, in 2017,
yes,
what is it that you are really trying to achieve now? You just want the world to know?
Not
that
really.
You happen to be the adopted?
Not really. The truth has been with me now for 7 years, and I've
so
been
what
following
is it
up.
that's making you
I've
speak
been
out
following
now?
up with my papers since 2015. I applied for my certificates. I found my adoption papers only in 2016. In 2015, I was looking everywhere. I had some papers which Dr. Vimla Gujral had given me, which was another adoption in 69. I went to them. They were not willing to give me any papers. In 2016, I filed a police complaint. First, I went to the government agencies, Kara and Sara, who supervise all the adoption agencies, and said, give me my papers. They said, we don't have any papers. I said, then where could I have been adopted? Was I even adopted at all? And they said, we don't know. And then a journalist, a very senior journalist who doesn't want to be named, said, well, look, there was talk of a child around 74. So I said, okay, let me go to the various adoption agencies and the T. Cesari court, which has a register, and look for all the adoptions that ever took place between 1969 and 75. So I went through that adoption register and I found Dr. Priya Singh Paul versus the state for an adoption.
Oh, I see.
And that's how I found my adoption. So everything, actually, this is the way it's happened. I found the information and the papers have collaborated, the information.
So do you have any memories of Sanjay Gandhi, whom you describe as Kabir, whom you would meet as Kabir, as Uncle Kabir?
I remember him in a kurta pajama. He seemed like a very simple person. He didn't seem very tall. Like when you're small, you think of somebody as very big. But I used to find that he was kind of not very tall. I found him very sweet. He used to talk about trees, and he helped me once because I used to be very upset that the birds used to get stuck in the door of the patang, and in Punjab we have a lot of kite flying. So I remember one incident where he was helping me, and I said, oh, there's the bird stuck up there, so how do I manage it? And he said, yeah, we can manage to get it safe, and how we brought it down, and he helped me. And I mean, obviously at that age he wouldn't,
How old were you approximately when
I would
these
have been
instances were
about
happening?
8, 9. He never met me in Delhi, I know that. I remember meeting him only in Ludhiana. So that means that he would have been coming to Ludhiana to meet up with me. And he never came to the house.
And he never came to the house?
No, my
So
mother, Dr. Priya Singh Paul, and Kabir didn't ever. It's surprising how I always used to meet him in the garden. We had a huge campus.
So your mother, I mean Dr. Sheila Singh, your
Yes.
adopted mother, and Sanjay Gandhi,
Knew each other, yes.
they knew each other.
Of course.
But they never came face to face
in front of
your
me.
presence.
No.
And why would that be?
The funny thing is that I only realized that he was Kabir in 2016 and 17 when I started looking at the photographs. And then my memory got triggered. So obviously I wouldn't know. I mean, there's so many questions in this entire journey that I have no answers to.
It's your story is so similar to the story of another senior Congress leader, Narayan Dutt Tiwari.
Yes.
Who decided to ditch the Congress party and joined other political parties, did business with them. Narayan Dutt Tiwari also went through a similar experience where an individual said that he was his son, and for the longest time Mr. Tiwari refused, and then there was a DNA test, a Delhi High Court ruling came, and finally Mr. Tiwari accepted that yes, indeed,
No, but
this
I
other
don't
person was
think
also
that
his son.
my real father didn't want to have a connect with me, because I remember that there is a shop called Jensen's in Delhi. Now I remember very, very clearly that dresses used to come for me, beautiful frocks used to come for me from Delhi. My mother used to give them to me, and they used to come quite frequently, and then they stopped coming. So I just remember very, very clearly that our household and my adopted parents underwent a great difference somewhere around 1980-81. I never used to come to Delhi before 1980.
If what you say is true, you have your memories with Kabir, who you later on realized was Sanjay Gandhi. You have stories about birds being caught in trees, and both of you, trying to get those birds down. The world knows Menaka Gandhi as the wife of Sanjay Gandhi. The world knows Varun Gandhi as the son of Sanjay Gandhi. Now, if you happen to be, let's say, the half sister, the step sister of Varun Gandhi, did you ever think in terms of approaching Menaka Gandhi, who otherwise fights for the rights of poor, underprivileged animals? Did you ever decide to approach her?
In 2010, when Auntie Vimla told me that this was my story, she told me to be afraid. She said, be afraid. Be afraid and go back to Bombay. You are not supposed to be living in Delhi. You should have nothing to do with politics. You should not have been coming here to work in the government because your life was in danger in 74. Your past is over. There is no need to bring this up at all. And in fact, her daughter Medha, who was married to Anup, called me up once and said, look, Anup ji is coming to Delhi. Why don't you speak to him and join another political party, but stay away from the Congress? And I didn't want to join any political party.
So it is not about you entering any kind of political domain or political
Not
turf.
at all.
This is not about you perhaps being open to the idea of joining a political party.
No.
Let's say the Congress,
I'm here.
the BJP,
I don't
whatever.
want to land up, people saying, later that she said. I make political comments. I understand politics.
Yeah, of course.
But I'm not a politician.
And
I understand the analysis. I understand everything.
The critics. I mean, I'm surely you're understanding the line of questioning as well. Your critics would argue, the naysayers.
Yes.
The cynics would say that all this is nothing else but an attempt being made by Priya Singh Paul somehow to come into political limelight and hopefully look at a political career.
No, you see, the thing is that if I had wanted to join politics, I have ample access to both the political parties. I've worked to some extent with various projects and issues which I have held dear to my heart with even the RSS, and I've enjoyed doing that. So there is no question of my not having a connect with political parties. I know them.
Do you have any relationship, any equation with Varun Gandhi?
No, not at all. Like
Have
I
you
said, that I
met
did
him,
not
spoken
approach
to
any
him?
of the family because, facing rejection is a very difficult thing. To go to somebody and say, look, I'm your relative and I'm your sister or your cousin, and then they say that, how do we know? So I had to go through a due process of due diligence and a due process of law, because I wanted to first prove this is who I am, then I can go to someone.
I would be playing in somebody's political hand, then I would made a biopic on Mrs. Gandhi.
So it's not a
I
biopic.
was a backdrop of emergency. 30% is reality. 70% is my fiction character.
Many want to know where has this story come from about Priya Singh Paul.
When I used to tweet about him, I didn't know much about him. I had met him as Kabir in my childhood, as an uncle. I did not know that that was Sanjay that I was meeting and that he was my father.
Priya Singh Paul is upset with your film that you are depicting facts which are not facts.
You see, Pehlaj Nehlani has mentioned on print that the worst thing that ever happened in this country was the emergency, and I'm so glad that this film is being made about that. It's so obvious that if you link this together, they're talking about the emergency. They're obviously talking about Indira Gandhi and Sanjay Gandhi.
So what is it? So it's about your word versus the rest?
The only
There's a
thing that
DNA
can prove,
test
yes,
you're willing to be
yes,
subjected
I am
to?
willing to take the DNA test. The trail of my adoption has been so complicated.
So what is it now? I mean, Sanjay Gandhi is dead, right? But his son is alive, and his wife happens to be alive.
Yes.
You know, his brother's family is alive.
Yes.
So now that your case is in court, right? Once the verdict comes out, what is it? What will this court verdict really mean for you?
You know,
Whatever
you
is the
know,
verdict.
we all yearn for our roots. Even Steve Jobs, when he was Steve Jobs, and he was 35 years old, he spent a lot of money, you know, paying detectives to find his biological parents. And when he died, he said that his best friend was that biological sister he had never known till he found her later, his best friend. And, you know, he felt very connected to his mother. You know, it does matter. You know, like for
It's
example,
just a personal calling for you.
for that, for
So
the
nothing else, no other reason.
I don't want the money, I don't want any property, I don't want any power, and I'm very clearly stating that. The only thing that I want is my paternal declaration that this is where I came from, because I did face, though everybody was very nice to me, I did face questions. You always do. Adopted children always face questions, where do you come from? Now it's just by chance that he is Sanjay. He could have been Gaurav, he could have been Rajiv, he could have been Ajay,
Whoever.
he could have been anybody, he could have been from a different socio-economic class, it didn't matter. For example, the movie Lion, it was a boy who's been brought up by a very wealthy family in Australia. His mother's a slum dweller, but children always come back to their parents.
Okay.
They look for their parents. Now the thing is, I wouldn't have come to the media at all. I wasn't intending to have any kind of press conference or tell the world that, look, this is who I am. But the point is, when Hindu Sarkar happened, I sent a legal notice, and when I sent the legal notice, I did not send a letter to the press. I was at Harvard, and I suddenly one day I received a message saying that, you know, there's an article about you in the newspaper, and I said, oh my God, and then I checked it out, and it was obviously sent by not me, wasn't sent by my friends. My lawyer and I had sent a legal notice on 23rd. This happened 7 days later. So obviously they had brought it out, or whatever reason they had to bring it out. And then after that, 1 or 2 TV channels mentioned that I might be having this motive or that motive. And then, you know, I started getting calls from the press. Now the point is, if I give one channel or one, and I've been in media, you know, so you never know what is the vested interest of whichever channel.
So isn't it interesting that in a sense you are on one hand trying to establish your own who the person who was your father.
Yes.
You're trying to figure out the roots of that.
Yes.
But even while you have not managed to prove the roots of your own self,
Yes.
you are saying that you felt so offended by whatever is a reflection of a movie which has not yet been released.
You know,
on the basis of what you saw
I'll
and
tell
what
you,
you read.
you know, since childhood I've been looking for my parents, because my mother and father were very old. My father 74 when he adopted me, my mother's 58. And there was a difference. There was a difference with my cousins. There was nobody who looked like me, and nobody who, you know, like when I had my son, that was the first time I felt I have a blood relative. I was so excited, you know, that I have a connect. So they have been in my heart even though I didn't know who they were. You love somebody sometimes because they are your parents, but you don't know who they are. You imagine they could have been like this, they could have been like that. Now the second thing is, I believe a lot in Dharma Shastra, and I believe a lot in karma, being a karma yogi. So I believe कि अगर आप पितृ पक्ष करते हैं, you pray during that time, and you know, go to the altar and give sacrifices for your ancestors. But if something comes against your ancestor, are you going to act upon it?
So you are in no ways going to back down from your demand, because Madhur Bhandarkar, whose interview we've done, is also very clear. He says, my work is a work of fiction. Priya Singh Paul can say what she wants to say.
You see, Pehlaj Nehlani has mentioned on print that the worst thing that ever happened in this country was the emergency, and I'm so glad that this film is being made about that. The new generation needs to know about what happened in the emergency. So obviously, it's so obvious that if you link this together, they're talking about the emergency. They're obviously talking about Indira Gandhi and Sanjay Gandhi. So on the one side you say, oh, this glass is, you know, not completely full. On the other side you say, yeah, it's a little empty. But you're saying the same thing.
Let me then in conclusion ask you, Priyaji, if you are confident that your father, and you are saying on this show very, very clearly that you're willing for a DNA testing.
We've already sent the letter.
You've already sent the letter.
Yes.
Then who is the mother? Who's your biological mother? Do you have any idea?
I was not told who my mother is.
And
I'd be happy that if people saw the show and the mother, if she's still alive, would come forward and talk to me. That would be wonderful. I mean, I would be happy to reach out to her.
Dr. Priya Singh Paul, Dr. Vimla Gujral, all these people you've spent your time with.
In fact, my adopted mother gave me the description of my father a long time ago. When I was small, and she said, your father used to be very fair, not very tall, with a big nose. He had a type A personality. He was very ambitious, but he was not doing anything at that time, and he was already losing his hair. She was always worried that I would also be born with, so she used to give me eggs and all that to make sure that I'd be tall and I'd not have an issue with my hair.
And what would she say whenever
and she'd give me vitamin B capsules to make sure that I wouldn't be so hyper and restless, because she'd heard, she was a doctor, so she said, I heard that he was very, very restless, so I'm going to give you vitamin B capsules to make sure you're not like that.
And what about when you would ask her? I presume that you'd obviously ask her on many occasions.
She used to say that, oh, I'm your mother. I don't think you should ask. I'm your mother and Balwant Singh Paul's your father. How can you ever think of... So I had promised her in 1990, I won't look till you move on. She said, you can look for your parents when I move on. She moved on in 2001.
Okay. So this is purely a personal quest for you. Nothing else, no money, no politics, no nothing. All right. Priya Singh Paul, thank you so much for taking time out and joining us here in City News 18.